Good morning. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Free Press Media Press Inc., an alternative parties books publisher, sponsors this podcast. I'm Andrew Bouchard. Welcome to the Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Today we have another exciting guest. He's from a state I lived in, a great state, Minnesota, and he's going to talk to us about his alternative party run for governor. His name is Stev Patterson. So welcome to the podcast, Stev.
Thanks, Andrew.
Stev, let us get started by you kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch.
So I've lived in Minnesota my whole life. I have lived kind of all over Minnesota. I was born out in Windham, Minnesota, out west, and then I moved to southeastern Minnesota. Lived in Lake City till I was 18, and then I went to college in Rochester, college in Winona. I lived in the cities for a little while. I lived up north. So I moved around a lot, but I've never left the state. And I've seen a lot of different walks of life. I've seen the difference between the Iron Range up north and living in the cities. And I just think that as a whole, Minnesota just deserves better than what we've been getting.
Yeah, it does sound like you got good experience in the different parts of Minnesota. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So kindly tell our audience which political party you represent.
So I'm on the ticket as the Grassroots-Legalize marijuana party.
Okay.
And I myself, I'm not a marijuana smoker, but
not.
I do think that people should be able to use marijuana recreationally if they would like to. There's been a lot of research done. There is a lot of medical benefits to it. I have asthma, so it wouldn't be a benefit to me.
Sure.
But there are some medical benefits to it, and as far as that goes, I mean, I think that if you can go to the doctor and get it prescribed to you, it probably isn't that bad for you.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, I don't know why, if it's something that people could grow in their own backyard, but rather they have to go, go get a prescription, go be seen at the doctor, spend, hundreds of money or hundreds of dollars, and instead of just saving their money and, planning it themselves. I don't see what the difference is.
Makes sense. So since you're not a marijuana smoker, how did you get involved in this party?
Well, it was one of the available parties, really. There is potential that, I could have went and got 2,000 signatures and I could have ran, unaffiliated or something.
Okay.
But I've been a third party voter, and I have voted red and blue in my life. But I've been a third party voter more recently, just because I feel like there needs to be more options.
Sure.
I like to use the example. I own a restaurant, okay, which is part of the reason why I'm fired up about how things have happened. But I always tell people, if I have one person apply to be a cook, or if I have 15 people apply to be a cook, which is going to provide the better employee. And I just feel like we need more choices. I feel like people can't even really stand behind the red candidates and the blue candidates that they're voting for. They're just saying, well, he's better than the other guy or the other gal. And I don't think that that's producing good results.
So it sounds like you think competition helps the political process give us the best candidates.
Oh, absolutely. And being that, there's the conservatives and the liberals, and I feel like, people are really just at each other's throats, and it's, I just feel like if there was a legitimate third option, people could just kind of say, hey, you know what, I don't want to fight with my neighbor anymore. I'd like to see things get better. I'm still an active voter, but I don't want to be mad at people all the time. It used to be that it was like, 3 months or maybe 6 months before the election, people would start to kind of butt heads, and then the election would be over, and it would, people would go back to their normal lives. Well, sometime in the last 8 to 12 years, people just got to the point where it doesn't matter if it's an election year or not. I don't like the other side, no matter what. And people are just, I think it stresses people out. And I don't know why we just can't be more civil. And I feel like, if there was just a third option where people say, I don't have a dog in the race. I want to just, hope for the best, but I don't want to argue with people every day of my life.
Sure. So who are your opponents in this race, and what are they like?
Well, assuming I get past the primary, the main competition is Tim Walz, who is the current governor, Democratic Farm Labor candidate, and he's really my motivation for running, to be honest, because I had a brewery that was going to start in Rochester, Minnesota, and we had a signed lease, we had an approval from the bank, we had contractors already employed, architects we had already paid to do work, plumbers we had already paid to do work. We were $60,000 into the project between myself and my business partner, and March 17th happens. Tim Walz says, "Don't leave your house." Tim Walz says it's dangerous to be outside. Tim Walz says contractors can't go work in an empty building because it's too dangerous. And it just got to the point where, we never really knew how long it was going to take to get through the whole COVID process, and to the point where people could, actively, go to small businesses. Of course, big box stores never really closed. But the small businesses were the ones that suffered, and as a result, my brewery, that, like I said, it cost us, between my business partner and myself, $60,000 of actual money, and that just got basically just wasted. There was no bailout or anything like that, and so really we were just kind of left in the wind, and it frustrated me because if we could have kept going and at least keep making progress, and we would have been open, ready to serve beer realistically by June, and we would have a business that would have been we would almost be in 2 years at this point. So it's frustrating for me that he made those decisions, and he said big box stores can stay open, but small businesses, that's what's dangerous. Bars and restaurants, well, you spread COVID there, but you don't spread it when you go to Hy-Vee, and I can make dozens of references, but at the end of the day, it was just unfair, and I disagree with how he handled things, and it really motivated me to run against him, because I do own a restaurant, as I said earlier. It opened September 4th of last year, so we're getting close, coming up to 1 year being open now. And I want to make sure that one way or another, this business does not close. And so, Tim Walz and I, we do agree on some things, and that's, in my opinion, the true meaning of being a moderate person. I'm pro-choice. Tim Walz is pro-choice. I'm pro-weed. Tim Walz is slowly becoming pro-weed. On the other side of things, Scott Jensen, he's the Republican candidate, and he seems to think similar to me as far as, the COVID restrictions and how they were unfair. He's also, pro-Second Amendment. I am pro-Second Amendment. So I mean, there are some real parallels between myself and my opponents, but I'm really just I see myself as kind of the voice of reason in between, Like, I think that people should be able to be pro-weed and pro-Second Amendment. I feel like people should be able to be, pro-First Amendment, being freedom of speech and freedom of peaceful protest, and also you should be able I'm pro-choice, like I said. So, there's a lot to it. The one thing I don't like about, the one thing I disagree with Scott Jensen on is that he thinks he can fix the fuel prices. the fuel crisis that is in our country right now, and I'm just not sure how he could do that at a state level. I've read his plan. I don't know how it's realistic to say that you could affect a nationwide crisis on a state level. But
so shall you get elected to this office, how do you plan to implement your party's vision and or your platform?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would legalize weed. That's, the thing that hasn't been done. I mean, as far as everything else, I think that we just kind of need to stay where we're at. I think that, abortions need to stay legal, but I feel like we just need to kind of end the conversation on it. I don't know why it's continuously been an issue, and with the Second Amendment and firearms too, I don't know why we're trying to continuously make it harder for people to legally own firearms, because of course, if you want to illegally get one, you sure can. And another big thing that I would like to see done is I would like to see people not be taxed over 40 hours per week on their state income tax.
So no tax for overtime.
Sorry, what did you say?
So no tax for overtime work.
Correct.
Okay.
And so if you do the math on that, it's a little bit over 2,000 hours. So I would just say people should be taxed for the first 2,000 hours, and then kind of the difference would be returned on the tax return, because it wouldn't be practical to say, well, we could do it every single week. But what I've noticed is that, and it's happened to me before, where I was when I was employed for the Department of Human Services, I had a job that it was called a behavioral modification expert. So in that role, it was myself and 4 vulnerable adults. Okay. So we had a call-in and we had another call-in, and I got mandated to work there 26 straight hours because I couldn't leave these people. And when I got my paycheck, it was an extra $20. And I think that's what frustrates people, is that, when you get your paycheck and you do the math and you say, okay, well, I'm supposed to be making $20 an hour, but I'm actually making, $13 an hour or whatever it is. I didn't do the math on that, but people just say, well, I get paid less per hour when I work extra. And I think people are frustrated by that. And for people that need to work themselves out of debt, or try to put their kids through college, or try to save up for a car, or maybe, there's an emergency, and they say, well, I'd work extra, but I'm not gonna get the money. And I think that would also help small businesses, because when, myself as a business owner, most of my employees have first jobs. This job is the second, third, or in some cases a fourth or fifth job for people. And if they weren't taxed on it, they would be more likely to, want to work extra. And another big problem that I've seen in Minnesota specifically is that people that are on state aid or on welfare, they're not able to work themselves out of that situation. And in my different lines of work, I've got the opportunity to talk to people that have been through financial hardship, or potentially they were currently in financial hardship, and it's very disappointing for me to, because I just say, well, why don't you work? Like, if you need money, why don't you work? And I've had several different people say, well, if I work over X amount of hours per week, whether it be, 16 hours or 24 hours or whatever the state has figured out for them, they say if I work too much, I lose my house. And I don't think that's right, because they're on, like a Section 8 housing or some kind of an assisted living program. And the state says, well, if we're going to help you out at all, you really can't make money. And I think that's totally inappropriate, because I really don't think we should be keeping score if someone is otherwise homeless, but they're trying to improve themselves and trying to, improve their living situation and, and their potential and everything else. I really feel like we're forcing people to just sit in this rut of welfare, and making it almost impossible for people to get out of it. And I really don't think that correlates with, what is supposed to be the American dream, where if you outwork other people, you should have more than that.
Sure. So it sounds like they put these people between a rock and a hard place. If they want to improve, they don't have an incentive to improve.
Oh, and it's really sad because a lot of times, these people, they have kids, and so they say, okay, well, I'd love to, work hard and have that self-worth and provide for my family, but, I run the risk that if the government finds out that I'm making too much money, and when I say too much money, we're not talking about a livable wage. I mean, it's not like these people are making $40,000-$50,000 a year and just, getting too much help from the government, and I don't think that's, like I said before, I don't think it's something that we should really be keeping track of, versus, because people could potentially be off of welfare in 2 or 3 years versus having them and maybe their kids and their grandkids all on welfare because they can't get out of it.
Sure. So since you mentioned you were adamantly opposed to your governor's approach to COVID, how would have you handled COVID if you were governor? And if COVID's still around, if you get elected governor, how are you going to handle it?
Real simple. And so I'll try to be fair to Tim Walz. The vaccine has been out, okay? And through the first portion that I'm overly critical of him, the vaccine was not out. But when I look at it and I say, well, how come big box stores can stay open but small businesses can't? And that's always going to be my argument is,
Okay.
how come the billionaire companies are okay to stay open but the small businesses aren't? And it's
okay. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's forever going to frustrate me, And I'll tell you, I used to work overnight as a security guard in a hospital, and I would go shopping at midnight. No one else would be in there. I'd go shopping at midnight. Well, now 10 o'clock curfews. Well, now I can't go shopping at midnight. Now I have to go shopping when everyone else is there. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how is this spreading people out? Making everyone, decreasing grocery store hours is going to help spread people out. Like, where's the logic in that? I mean, no. If I would have done it, I would never ever shut down any businesses. I think that's totally irresponsible. And you can go back and forth on the mask debate. Did it help? Did it not help? I mean, I don't know. It seemed like COVID still spread even though everyone was forced to wear them. I don't know if there's any real evidence that say it helps, but but people say, well, let's be responsible and let's try to help out our neighbor, and I get the spirit of that. When the vaccine's out and the people that want to have the vaccine have gotten it, they've incentivized it, they've pushed it, they've offered to pay people to get it, and then they started threatening people who weren't getting it, saying, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't leave the country. You're going to get fired. My running mate, Matt Huff, he was actually walked out by Mayo Clinic. He was a Mayo Clinic security guard with me, and he was walked out for refusing to get vaccinated. And that left, our friends and coworkers very short-staffed because I walked out before that because I said, well, I'm not even going to entertain this stuff. And I am vaccinated, but that doesn't mean that I think that everyone should have to be. People have reasons that they don't want to be, and I just consistent with my whole basis is I just think that people should be able to choose to do what they want to do. And if the vaccine is out and the vaccine's working, then why are still people people are still getting COVID? And we don't talk about it, we don't publicize it, but it's still out there. And, and I'm sure as we get closer to the election, I'm sure we'll hear more about it. And if you watch the news, I mean, you can still hear it if you want to, but it's just not as blatant as it used to be, we'll say. And if it was me, if it comes back and I'm in control, I'm just going to say, business as usual. I mean, I'm not going to force anyone to wear a mask. I'm not going to force anyone to really do anything. I mean, I think that people should just be allowed to do what they want to do. And
All right.
we're just, I mean, the vaccine's been out for long enough that, if it was tangible and working, I don't know why it would matter if other people were vaccinated or not.
So homelessness is a problem in many states, and when I was in Minnesota, it was a problem, and I imagine nothing has changed in that regard since I left. So how would you handle homelessness as governor?
Well, it kind of goes back to my previous example, but I will tell you that homelessness is a real problem, and in Minnesota, it does seem to be worse than other places. I will tell you that Minnesota has some of the best welfare benefits as far as not only do we give people food stamps, but we give people actual cash to use on their food stamps. So with the EBT program in Minnesota, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they call it a cash side where they get actual cash so they can buy, say soap and toothpaste and stuff that, maybe food stamps doesn't cover, but is essential, right? And then they have the food stamp side of things. And I've noticed that people come from other states to Minnesota to come get our benefits. And I'm going to be kind of blunt here. I think that our welfare is too comfortable. I think that people, should be motivated, and there should be a tiered welfare system to kind of incentivize people to work themselves out of it. But when I look at it and I see people I don't know how I want to say this. It seems to me that just it's too comfortable. When people are not motivated to get off of welfare, that seems like a problem to me. And like in Rochester, Kim Norton, the mayor, it seems like she's putting up a new homeless shelter every year. And in her mind, and I truly believe that in her mind, she thinks she's doing what is best, and saying, well, let's make sure these people have, a warm place to sleep. Let's make sure that, they have basic necessities. But it's kind of the old, give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish. Like if you're not helping these people become self-sufficient, are you really helping them, or are you just helping them survive? Because I don't think that, just making sure they have a place to sleep and making sure that they have, soup to eat or whatever. I don't think that's full self-actualization for these people. I think it's just kind of it makes her feel good that, oh, well, I'm helping, but, are you really helping, or are you just, training people to be sufficient, or, relying on the government, I should say.
So what is your campaign strategy to reach the voters?
Well, I'm doing mostly on the internet. I have been in some local papers. I'm trying to reach, and this is strategic for me. So like I'm on Facebook and I'm on TikTok and I'm on Twitter, and I feel like that's going to be where my effort is best spent. Okay. Because I look at it, you have the people, they've always voted red. Their whole life they've always voted red. Doesn't matter if I exist or not. Doesn't matter who the candidate is, they're going to vote red. And then you have, the same people. Well, I voted blue for 50 years. Doesn't matter who the candidate is. I've always voted blue. I'm going to vote blue. And I look at it as, there's the voters, that are the 18 to 30, that, well, maybe they haven't voted before. Maybe they haven't been motivated to vote before. maybe they voted red or blue a couple times, but, they're maybe not stuck in a rut that way. And so I try to get visibility that way. I'm also not a candidate that's going to go knock on people's doors. And I know that that's still cool. And I know that people, they brag about, oh, I knocked on 100 doors today. Okay, great. But for the most part, I feel like people these days don't want to be bothered.
Huh.
And when I look at that, I try to make myself available. Like I have some meet the candidate events scheduled. I have one in Rochester next week, where, I'm going to a new business in Rochester. It's called Chip Shots. It's a golf simulator, and they have pickleball courts, and they have really good food. And, so I'm going to go there. I'm going to have a table set up. I know I have some people showing up already to come talk to me about, what I feel like is important. But I want people, that basically that want to talk about it to come up to me. If I go up to one of those people, like I said before, well, I voted blue my whole life, I've voted red my whole life, and I knock on their door, it's going to be a waste of time.
Sure.
And so I'm trying to find the people that are looking for, other options, that are maybe looking for, kind of a reasonable choice that's in between that people can get excited about. So
All
most
right.
of my campaigning is online.
Okay, you're focusing on digital.
Right.
So are you doing this campaign by yourself, or do you have a team assisting you?
I do have a small team helping me. Matt Huff, my running mate, is involved, of course, my lieutenant. I have a social media guy who does, my filming. I have some people with some campaign experience, we'll say, that, kind of are telling me things that I need to watch out for and, make sure I don't miss the deadline on this and so on and so forth. I mean, I'd say it's a team of probably eight people that are pretty committed to it.
Good. That's good to hear. So how are you motivating the team?
Well, I really don't have to motivate them. I mean, for the most part, they came to me because, I mean, there are some people, there's a lot of people in Minnesota that are just frustrated by, how things have gone over the past 2 years. And, I mean, basically since the start of COVID and beyond. And I know a lot of people have lost their businesses and people have lost their jobs and people, there's, families hate each other. And families should never hate each other over what you hear on CNN. And, I look at it and, Tim Walz says, okay, well, you can't go to Thanksgiving because, it's not safe to go to Thanksgiving. And so, the family meets up, but there's one uncle or one aunt that says, oh, well, you can't go to Thanksgiving because if you go to Thanksgiving, then, we could potentially spread COVID and that could, kill millions and millions of people because that's what they say on the news. And it's incredibly stressful and people are just, they're irritated about it and they want, a candidate that they know and trust. And here I am, it's not some media picked, force-fed candidate. And, I'm very authentic. I've had a few people, reach out to me, or I shouldn't say people, I should say, groups or organizations, and they've said, well, do you want us to endorse you? Here's what we stand for. And I look at it and, I say, oh, well, that's a really good group. Like, that could really help me. And then I say, okay, well, what all do you stand for? And they say, well, we stand for this, 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 and this. And I say, oh, hold on, that one thing, that's not going to work for me because that's not what I represent. So I'd like your vote, but I don't want your endorsement. And because I look at it, and I'll give you one example. So there was a group, and no offense to them, but I don't remember the acronym to what it was about. But it was essentially along the lines of women against women being abused, to paraphrase. Okay, and I said, well, that sounds like something right up my alley because I don't like it when women get abused. And then they said, okay, well, just so you know, we also, we stand for BLM. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to draw the line there. And it's unfortunate because as far as the title of BLM goes, I agree with it. And I have, my godson is black, and he also is autistic, okay? And so when I look at that and I say, wow, like he's really got an uphill battle, and I would hate, I think of it and I think of his parents and I think of other really close friends of mine, and I say, like I don't want him to have to fear police. But I also support the police, like I am 100% back to blue. And that doesn't mean that all cops are good, but it certainly doesn't mean that all cops are bad. And so, I can't look at it and say, well, I'd really like to have this endorsement of this women against women being abused, because I just can't stand for everything that you stand for. And
so you have standards who endorses you.
Sorry, what was that?
So it sounds like you have standards in who endorses you.
Yeah, I really don't want anyone's endorsement, and I really don't want anybody's money. The internet's free for the most part. Like, I think that if people get excited about it and they start talking about it, people kind of figure it out that I'm running, and I'll do things that I can get out. But, I'm not going to be the dude that's running commercials, when I'm not going to be the YouTube ad you have to skip. I think that's annoying. I think that people are over it. And I just want to be, here and available. And, if I, get enough credibility where Tim Walz is taking out ads, saying how terrible of a person I am, well, I guess then I made it.
Yeah, good point.
but who doesn't skip YouTube ads? Like, who's the one guy that doesn't skip the YouTube ad that, like, people still think it's a good idea to spend all that money? And when you look at it and they say, okay, well, that's a campaign expense, and then they write it off, and then, then taxpayers are paying to be annoyed. And to me, I'm like, I don't want to spend taxpayer money, to take out a billboard or something. Like, people that care are gonna know, and it kind of is what it is.
So given what you just said, is there a way our audience can support your campaign?
Yeah. I have, everything is basically run through Facebook for now. I got a website that'll be up and going. On my Facebook page, I'll have my website listed sometime in the next 24 hours here. You can buy T-shirts. None of the money goes to me, so please don't think that any of it goes to me. It goes to my buddy who makes T-shirts for me. So it's not a campaign donation by buying T-shirts. It's just, if you want my T-shirt, you can have one. I got some yard signs coming. I'm on TikTok. I'm on the Twitter. But more than anything, if you want to support my campaign, just tell people I exist, because I feel like I line up better with most people's values than the left or the right does. And so I just feel like if people know about me, then that would be my greatest potential.
Sounds good. So they can go to your Facebook page and then find out more about your campaign and possibly buy a T-shirt if they like.
Great.
All right. Sounds like a plan. So, Steve, thank you kindly for coming on the podcast today and talking about your campaign. We wish you all the best in your campaign and also in your new restaurant.
Awesome. I do appreciate it, Andrew. Thank you.
All right. Take care and all the best.
Yep. Bye.